Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 4 matchup between the Baylor Bears and the Iowa State Cyclones. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 4. You got Baylor, who's 2-1. This is a team that took a loss to BYU a couple of weeks ago, but they're still ranked in the top 20. They're taking on an Iowa State team that is still undefeated and definitely a team with something to prove. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this match here today, starting out with their team trends. Baylor beat Texas State 42-7 in their Week 3 matchup, so a dominant win for Baylor as it should have been. And once again, they're 2-1. They took that brutal loss at BYU in Week 2. That was a double overtime loss, 26-20. And BYU's a good football team, so it's not a terrible loss, but certainly that's one that Baylor wishes they could have had. If you think about it, Baylor wins that game, they're probably ranked a good ways into the top 10 right now. But as for Iowa State, they beat Ohio 43-10. They were 3-0, still undefeated. Of course, they beat Iowa back in Week 2, 10-7 on the road. Also beat Southeast Missouri State in Week 1. So Iowa State, this is a team that's kind of I don't know for sure if they received votes in the AP poll, but this team is still undefeated and definitely should be considered as a team to be ranked for this week. But there's no doubt if they beat Baylor here, Iowa State could jump into the top 20. Games be on Saturday, September 24th in Ames. The Iowa State Cyclones are the home team for this matchup. Kickoff is 11 a.m. Central. Spread's going Iowa State by 3. Over-under's 45. And your FPI is going Baylor 52.8%. So Iowa State is slightly favored in this matchup, which to some may be a surprise considering Iowa State is unranked versus Baylor, who is ranked 17th. But quite honestly, both teams are, I'd say, extremely close skill-wise, despite one team being ranked, one team not. Iowa State is, I'd say, a pretty good football team it looks to be right now. Of course, when they played Iowa, who is by far the best team they've played so far on the road, they only scored 10 points there. That was just a defensive and just a really low-scoring defensive game. And offensively, both teams couldn't get anything going. But in the other two games that Iowa State's played, their offense has been just fine. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on here is how Iowa State's offense is going to be. Over under 45. FPI is going Baylor here slightly. Series history, Baylor leads at 11-9. They won the last matchup between these two teams, but Iowa State does lead in the past 5, 3-2. So a pretty split series between these two teams. Always super competitive games, so you can expect more of the same. I'd say definitely in this matchup. If you look back to last season, Baylor won it 31-29. Iowa State won it by a touchdown in 2020. Baylor won it in 2019 by 2. So you get the trend. The games in the past and especially in recent history have been extremely close and have really gone either way, with the home team winning the past 4 matchups as well. Stat comparison for this one: Baylor 43 points per game, 14 points allowed, 219 passers a game, 234 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 206 passing, 84 for rushing. So Baylor has been overall a really impressive team on offense so far this season, as they scored nearly 70 against Albany, scored 42 against Texas State, only got 20 against BYU, but still Cougars are a pretty good football team, and they've got a great backfield, 234 rush yards on average so far this season, which is even more than their passing total. So they got an impressive backfield, of course, led by Richard Reese so far this season with 237 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then if you look at Iowa State on the flip side, 31 points per game, 9 points allowed. So I think that 10-7 win over Iowa holds a lot of weight to it when you are looking at averages through 3 games. But they got 259 passers a game, 156 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 174 passing, 60 for rushing. So that's very impressive defensively with their stats so far this season. And on offense, they've been mainly a passing offense. Hunter Deckers is the quarterback for this team, and he's been decently impressive so far this season with 750 yards, 8 touchdowns. Has thrown 3 picks, but 800 yards or approaching 800 yards through 3 games is definitely impressive. The recent matches, Baylor beat Texas State 42-7, lost to BYU 20-26 in double overtime. And then they beat Albany 69-10 back in Week 1. And as for Iowa State, 43-10 win over Ohio, beat Iowa on the road 10-7, and beat Southeast Missouri State 42-10. Your key points for this one: Baylor 2-1. Blake Shapen shows potential as a quarterback. We haven't seen him have a huge breakthrough performance yet, but he's definitely a quarterback that I see a lot of potential in. I mean, he's thrown over 500 yards so far this season, 4 touchdowns. So, and this is really his time to show up. As I mean, against BYU, couldn't lead this team to a win. So, we'll see how he can do in this matchup, going on the road for the second time this season. Rushing game, definitely strong. I mean, they got a good amount of depth there in the backfield, and they're defensively talented for sure. As defensively, they've been impressive at times, only allowing 7 points to Texas State last week. Now, I get that it's Texas State and UAlbany, but, I mean, they've been fairly impressive there. And, I mean, even BYU. BYU is a really strong team on offense, and through 2 overtimes, Baylor allowed 26 points to them, which isn't terrible. I mean, BYU is a strong team on offense. Once again, Jaron Hall, they're very talented there. So Baylor on defense has shown potential at times. They got something to prove here. They're a Big 12 contender. I mean, this is a big game for Baylor in determining how this team is going to be in the rest of the season. And quite honestly, we're going to learn a lot about both these teams in this matchup. The winner of this game is more than likely going to be a decent Big 12 contender. I mean, Baylor wins this one. They get up to 3-1, probably ranked in the top 15. I mean, that means that this is a Baylor team that really has got a significant impact on the Big 12 moving forward, and definitely could be a team to keep an eye on. I mean, same goes for Iowa State. They're 3-0 right now. They can move up to 4-0. They can get a win over a top 20 team here. That'd be huge for the Cyclones. They've also been a defensively strong team, so you can see why this game is expected to be more of a lower scoring one. Hunter Deckers has got a great opportunity here for a big win, and they also have the home field advantage. Iowa State has pulled some stunning upsets at their home field in Jack Trice Stadium in the past few years. So this is another opportunity for one of those, even though, I mean, if you think about it, Iowa State, they're unranked versus Baylor, but according to the spread, Iowa State is actually the favorite here. So that's something to consider in this matchup. But, I mean, for Iowa State, they could be a Big 12 contender. They're kind of in that position right now where Iowa State is not really considered one yet, but they definitely could be if they could get a win here for Baylor. I mean, they're already considered one, but this could definitely change things. And that said, let's get to the prediction here for Baylor and Iowa State, one of your big matchups coming up here in the Big 12 in Week 4. And I'm going Iowa State. 28-24 is my predicted final score. This was a tough one of the tougher ones to predict in this week and so far in this season. I mean, it's extremely close. Both teams are talented teams with plenty of upside, but in the end, Iowa State just being at home in this matchup, and quite honestly, I mean, I've been impressed with Iowa State so far this season. I mean, they had that 10-7 win over Iowa, which was sloppy at times to say the least, but I mean, Iowa State at home in this matchup. Hunter Deckers is only getting better. I definitely like Iowa State to potentially pull off the win in this matchup. Baylor, though, I mean, you can't sleep on the Baylor Bears one bit. This is a team that's also extremely talented, and I mean, we saw how Baylor was last season. They proved the doubters wrong multiple occasions last season, and they ended up as potentially the best team not to be in the college football playoff. But in the end, for this matchup, I'm going to go Iowa State here. Got to go with Iowa State. More confident picking in the Cyclones here. Probability Iowa State 51%. It's as close as it gets. Once again, over-under's 45. I'll take the over for this matchup and Iowa State to cover the spread in the end. With that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.